All right, it's June 17th, 2019. Um, and yeah, that's correct. Uh, this is about a 10-year-old webcam, and I literally live in a trailer, so that's the reason for the tin can sound. Um, my name is Mike Finley. I recently received a kidney transplant, and this is me telling my story. Um, go back to 2007 and found out from a visit to the emergency room here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, that my kidneys aren't doing too well. And it really impressed upon me that I see a specialist. And I followed up with a specialist and basically found out that I was third stage kidney disease, chronic kidney disease, which is a five-stage disease, and I was already third stage in. Crazy. And so we were trying to figure out how to get this taken care of, and it was determined that my blood pressure was killing my kidneys. And uh, we started me on a blood pressure regimen, which seemed to work for a number of years. Fast forward to 2013, and I was going to leave the state of Michigan, um, go to school, art school, and I was out of blood pressure medication at the time. So I needed to call my doctor, set up some uh, appointment, and because they hadn't seen me in a while, so they needed to evaluate me again. Um, so I went in, and they told me that, yeah, my kidney function had gotten worse and that I would need to go on dialysis um, practically immediately. Uh, so within a few weeks, I was fitted with a catheter and I started, well, a few months. Um, I got my summer, and by October of 2013, I was fitted with a chest catheter, and that was how I dialyzed for a number of months, um, about 3 months. Uh, a couple of weeks after I got the chest catheter, I got my dialysis access in my left arm. Well, we tried with my left forearm. That didn't last, that didn't take. So within a couple of weeks of that surgery, I had another surgery where the fistula was placed in my upper left arm, and that one took. Uh, it took 12 weeks to mature instead of the standard 8 weeks. But no matter. Once it started, once it was ready to use, we started using it. I was out of my chest catheter within the week, and I I was on hemodialysis for about a year and a half before I wanted to start doing dialysis at home. And the first option to do hemodialysis at home required me to have a friend or teammate work with me because it's complicated and it's not something that you would want to do alone. Uh, and basically I had trouble finding somebody. We're talking uh, a serious commitment every day for a couple of hours, sitting with me for treatment, and yeah, just wasn't possible. So they suggested that I do home peritoneal dialysis, which is a different form of treatment. It would require me to have another catheter placed, this time in my belly. Um, One line running into my peritoneum, which is basically, for those of you that don't know, your all your guts are housed in this sac, and that sac itself is called the peritoneum. There's negative space in there between the sac and your guts, and peritoneal dialysis fills that negative space with a dialysate fluid um, that works by reverse osmosis. It sits and dwells in your stomach for 4 to 6 hours, and then you flush it out later. Uh, it was a treatment option that was offered to me um, in the beginning when I first needed to go on dialysis, but it was a lot of work. Um, the first month or so, I did 2 months. You have to do what they call manual exchanges, which is exactly what it sounds like. You manually connect to this bag, and they give you a big IV pole, and you drain, let gravity do its thing, and fill fill back up with a new fluid. The whole process takes about half an hour, and then you're full of fluid until your next exchange. You do that 4 times a day, and like I said, I did that 4 times a day for 2 months. Excuse me. The second month, about halfway through the second month, I started training to work with a cycler, which is a machine that does all of that for me. It does it while I sleep, though. So, and it was cool. It was cool for a little while. I did that for 3 years before I just couldn't do it anymore. It became a lot of work. Um, I became severely depressed, and I couldn't do it anymore, y'all. I this is fast forward to last year, 2018, the end of the summer, uh, August, and I'm sitting in my bathroom on the toilet, and I'm just praying to God. I'm like, something has to change, something has to give. Um, I just don't want to do this anymore. I was ready to give up, and I didn't see anything else as an option. Um, like going back to hemo or anything like that. Well, my former roommate, Jenny, came and talked to me and said, "Hey, listen, I work with this lady who is on dialysis. She has her new kidney, and I'd really like you to talk to her." And it was crazy. It was like an answer to my prayer, because it was like within the next 2 days that Jenny came with me, or came to me with this. And I was like, look, yeah, I'll do it. I'll talk to anybody at this point, because I'm out of options. I'm out of feeling for this. So a few days later, Marion Guilford walks into my house, and the moment I saw her, I knew who she was. She was one of the patients at Davita when I first started going. We never talked, but she was one of them faces, among 50 that I recognized. I'd see her at the clinic. She was there during my time. So, um, but we never talked. And so she came in, and it was like we knew each other forever. She just sat down though and started telling her story. Didn't really, never told me what to do. Never told me how to feel. Um, just started telling her story, which is, she never went on PD, but the rest of it, it's so similar. And the whole time I'm listening to her tell her story, I'm like, that's me, that's me, that's me. I'm sitting there like a kid on Saturday morning watching cartoons too, man. It was just, It was an amazing day, um, and it was it was what I needed. The only thing she really told me to do was get off of PD, go back to the chair, and put in my referral for transplant, which by this point I had done and let go to the wayside two referrals at Mercy Health here at St. Mary's in Grand Rapids. Um, the first time uh, I forewent was because they required me to have almost $3,000 in a secured savings account for post transplant um, while I heal up and can't work to supplement that income. Uh, and I just couldn't meet that goal within a year. Um, the second time I let it fall through, I wasn't mentally or emotionally prepared. Really, I was just kind of going through the motions. Um, I really didn't want to get, as I was saying at the time, carved up. Uh, it was just not a happy option for me at the time. And the doctor, the nephrologist I had, was an asshole and wouldn't let me smoke weed. I could quit the cigarettes, I could quit the alcohol, easy peasy, but don't ask me to quit what God gave us, all right? Um, leave me one vice. So I went back to the chair almost immediately, and that was a weird experience going in as the patient with the power to say, look, I don't want to do this anymore. For 3 years, I was basically at the mercy of my PD team, the nephrologist, the nurses, and it was, and the dietitian. We'll get to her maybe in a different video because I'm not going to waste any time on her today. Um, so anyway, it was about another. It probably took me about a month to officially put in my referral for transplant, and I got it through U of M here in Michigan, of course. And I couldn't have asked for a better team. Once Davita finally put the referral in, um, it took them about 2 months of me, almost three, of me saying, look, what's the deal? Why isn't my referral through yet? Um, you guys know how it is with doctors. So referral finally goes through, and I start working with Ann Arbor. And they send me, of course, my list of labs that I got to get done. Most of my stuff was already done because I had most of my testing was already done because I had done it twice with Mercy Health. So they just needed some updated blood work, TB test, X-rays. Um, got all that done, and wouldn't you know it, the next day I go into Metro Hospital for a full week. Um, find out I've basically got double lung pneumonia, fluid on the lungs, and they were gonna go in and like do the whole needle stabby and draw out all that fluid, and I'm like, please Jesus, don't let them do it, please Jesus, don't let them do it. Um, so what they ended up doing, since I'm a dialysis patient and dialysis, half of all of that shit is fluid removal. They dialyzed me for 5 days. I went in, we weigh in kilos, so forgive me. You guys can do the exchange rate later. I went in at like 81, 82 kilos, and uh, when I came out, I was down to 69 kilos. Um, and I think the exchange rate is about 35 pounds of fluid was taken off of me. There was one day I think the third day of dialysis. Um, the whole time I'm just in my bed, blankets over my legs and everything. And I know what my legs look like. By the end of that treatment, um, I pulled the blankets back, and holy shit was literally the first thing that I said. My legs looked like I thought they looked like Gandhi legs. They were that skinny, and I couldn't believe it, man. I just couldn't believe it. Um, Long story short, they get the fluid off without having to do the stabby stabby. I go home. Another problem I had during that whole time was my blood pressure. But once they got the fluid off, that kind of balanced out a little bit. A few more months go by. That was September of 2018, by the way, if I need to say that. A few more months go by, and turn of the year, and February comes up, and I am back in the hospital uh, for a heart, a blood pressure, and they determined that I now have cardiomyopathy on top of everything else, which is a weak side to the heart that's getting all this blood and has to pump twice as hard to push it back to the other side of the heart. Um, Bottom line, I don't get great circulation in my legs anymore. Um, did get the blood pressure under control, increasing a couple of my medications. One of them they increased more than doubled, um, which I'm still on that medication and at the same dose, and I'm pretty sure it's causing my night sweats. I go through 4 shirts a night right now, and it's ridiculous, y'all. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, because of that, I had to see a transplant uh, cardiologist, and she suggested that we wait another 6 weeks because of all of that shit, and it was frustrating, uh, but it was what it was. I But once she cleared me after that 6 weeks, um, well, I had to have a heart catheter done um, to determine the validity of my heart, make sure it was strong enough for transplant, which of course I knew it was, but they needed their numbers. Um, so it was cool. After that, there was about 3 weeks of bullshit between my transplant nephrologist, and of course, my cardiologist was on vacation. Um, Basically, my nephrologist or my cardiologist was sending me to get some genetic testing done to figure out how I got the cardiomyopathy, which shouldn't have held up me getting on the transplant list. But my doctor's dumb, my nephrologist is dumb, and was trying to hold me up, and that was frustrating. So I had to wait 2 weeks for Bave to come back and settle all that. And once it was settled, they called me and said, "Now, mind you, this is brand new. This is the brand new part." Um, let's see, today is Monday, so they called me 2 weeks ago to tell me that I made the list, and I was like, "Sweet." So then for 2 days, I don't even get a phone call. No phone calls. Tammy, my best friend, called me once, but no robocalls, no calls from family, no calls from any other friends, and I thought that was weird. So about day three, you forget about the hype, and um, things go back to normal. People start calling, um, so you're just waiting for this phone call that can come at any time. It could come within the next couple of weeks. It could come, I don't know. it could be a month from that point. I really had no clue what kind of time frame I was looking at. My roommate, Marion Guilford, ended up being my roommate. Um, she got her call in with it at 2 weeks. Uh, so that's where I was kind of ballpark in mind. So on the list on Monday, Saturday morning, that Saturday morning. Well, yeah, 12:48 a.m. I get the first phone call, but I'm knocked out. My friend Jane is here. Um, she is going to be my advocate for this whole thing. And sorry about the itching. It's just wow. Um, so she spent the night and she wakes me up and she's like, Mike, did you hear that? Is that your phone? I'm like, no, I don't think so. And I just knock right back out. So she about half an hour later, 40 minutes later, 1:30, the phone starts ringing again. This time I hear it. But it's stuck in my recliner. And I go digging for it. Of course, missed the call. Check the voicemail, and it's this guy, and he says he's calling for a wellness check. He's from U of M, calling for a wellness check. He did say transplant, um, but I thought that was weird. Like wellness check, dude. Call me during the day. Why are you calling me at night? Um, so I was gonna say screw it, call him back in the morning because it's the middle of the night. And Jane's like, he said transplant, dude. So you should probably call him back, find out what that's about. Figured it was a good idea, so I call back, and yeah, he goes through this whole spiel, make sure I'm going doing my dialysis like I'm supposed to. When's the last time I went to dialysis? Am I staying within my dry weight? Taking my meds? Everything else is kosher. Um, I'm like, yeah, 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 dude. What? Yeah. Why you can't call me in the morning for this? And then he says it. Then he tells me, um, well, we've got a patient here who is a potential donor. Well, he is a donor, but he's got kidneys to go. And we were wondering if you were still interested. The question is that. Um, yeah, yeah, dude, I'm interested. Uh, so he tells me, okay, well, basically, um, there's some things that have to happen with the patient right now. He has to go in to surgery and have the organs removed and then biopsied to make sure there's uh, no unforeseen problems in the future, type of thing, um, with the kidneys. So, which is cool, makes sense. So he said, go about your normal Saturday, and we'll give you a call um, some point later today. So I hang up and I'm like, all right, dude. I'm not, like my mood is just going from like I'm no longer sleepy. I'm awake and I'm just from here just and so yeah, it's no longer my normal Saturday. I'm up. I go and I start cleaning my house because I'm not coming back to a dirty house. um, and at this point, I'm just figuring that yeah, he's going to call me back. It's not no maybe. And I I was like, cool, 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 cool. Packed a bag. Took a shower. Um, Jane went back to sleep about 4 o'clock. Probably sooner than that. Probably like 3 o'clock. Um, I didn't go back. I didn't go to bed until 6, and woke up around 8, 8:30. Jane was kind of rousing up. Um, we were just both excited. And dude calls back at about quarter after 9 in the morning, and basically says that was the point that the patient was going in, um, and that I needed to get my butt to Ann Arbor pretty much by 12, which was easy to do at that point. Um, oh, one other detail that I did forget to say was when he called that morning, he basically told me that I was next up for a kidney, which was apparently a no-no. I'll find out later because I wasn't next up for the kidney, but that part of the story later to come. So we pack up all our bags and head on out to Ann Arbor. It's about a 2 hour drive, 2.5 hour drive from Grand Rapids. The way I drive, yeah, it was about 2 hours. uh, we get about 4 miles from the hospital, still on the highway. We're going from, I think, 14 to Highway 23, which is like the last highway before the hospital. And all of a sudden, the van shuts down. And I'm like, shit. Now, the only other time this has happened to me in a vehicle, I was riding with a friend and it was his transmission. And same feeling, like the vehicle just shut down and you're just decelerating. Um, I didn't even look at the gas. Neither Jane nor I heard the dinging. So um, the whole time I'm thinking, fuck, transmission, transmission, please don't be the transmission. I pull over. Jane's like, ask me, what's up? Why are you stopping? We're almost there. Um, and again, we were like running the clock because we would have gotten there just at noon. So it's like 10 to 12, I think, at this point. And I got to call the hospital. Tell dude, I'm like, just ran out of gas. There's nothing they can do. They ain't gonna send nobody out to get me. Um, so told him I'll call him back as soon as I get everything, as soon as I figure out what's happening. So Jane gets on the horn with her insurance. They're talking like 45 to an hour before they get there. Uh, she mentioned calling Uber, so I call Uber or set up an Uber account on my phone and got an Uber coming out to get me. And I'm like, an Uber's not gonna figure this out because I'm like, I'm on the highway. And by the time traffic was stopped because of us, all these emergency, I ended up calling 911. So we had all these emergency vehicles come up. They were blocking traffic. I'm pretty sure the Uber was stuck in traffic. Um, but they bring the fire truck, the little fire truck SUV, and two ambulances. Um, I'm the only one that needs an ambulance. She just needs freaking gas. Um, but anyway, I got to ride in an ambulance. We'll see what the bill is for that next month. Uh, for 4 miles. Got to the hospital. Uh, got up to my room finally after about 20 minutes. And Jane shows up about 5 minutes after I got to my room. It was so smooth, y'all. Um, apparently, somebody from AAA uh, was in the area and brought her gas. Praise the Lord. Um, because AAA was even talking about, uh, well, they were the ones talking about an hour. So we get there all settled in. They tell me to take a shower, wipe down with these sandy wipes. And by this point, I think it's like 1 o'clock. And they come in my room and tell me that things have been pushed back to 5 o'clock. So I'm like, I'm bummed, but I'm here to get a new kidney, so y'all can't stop me now. And so cool, just bumming around, watching TV. Of course, I'm not eating this whole time. I can't eat. Uh, can't even have ice chips, y'all. I hate that shit. So waiting, waiting, waiting. They come in my room again and tell me that things have been pushed again to, I think that's when they told me 6 o'clock. Basically, they did this two more times, and then it was 10 o'clock, and just before, well, it was about 6:30. They come in my room, and after they had told me it was going to be 10 o'clock, and now they tell me it's going to be six, or yeah, 6 in the morning. Super bummed, but it, at this point, the surgeon comes in and tells me it's definitely 6 o'clock in the morning. So once he tells me, I'm like, okay, bet you you promised. So the rest of the night goes by. I actually get to eat dinner, as long as they gave me like a 10 o'clock time limit. If I didn't eat by 10, I was screwed. So of course I get Chinese. Is almost like my last meal, and that's probably what drove up my potassium there for a minute. Uh, Went to sleep finally. Um, Woke up to the nurse right next to me, and it was like a dream. Everything was dark. The only light is around the nurse. She's messing with my IV bag, and she's like, "They're coming to get you." And that's when it all sunk in. Everything. My whole life was about to change. All the fear that I had about being carved into a couple years ago, um, fears about not waking up, fears about waking up during the procedure. Um, Probably the greatest fear was the not waking up. I had a cousin who had lupus, and I remember her telling the story one time about being in surgery. I heard a couple people kind of have this moment with God where they're in surgery or on their way to surgery, and it's almost like they had this conversation with God while they're under, and it's just like, do you trust me, or are you just going to be afraid? And they had a choice to make, and they all basically said they were going to trust him. Um, they made it through their surgeries, but both of them, within a few more years, were gone. You know, I guess the Lord wanted them home. One had it was my cousin with the lupus, and then Becky. Um, I forget what was wrong with her. Um, Becky knows she was a sweet lady. But anyway, those two experiences caused me to have a lot of fear about not waking up. And this was the only surgery I really had that fear with. Um, I went under for my fistula surgery, for my catheter surgeries, and I didn't have that fear. But this was something different, y'all. You know what I'm saying? Um, I'm going under to get a new kidney, and all sorts of stuff could have gone wrong, but nothing did. Um, said I called my mom, told her I was getting ready to go downstairs. I mean, who? So talked to her for a minute, said a quick prayer with her and Jane in the room, and the march began. Like all the emotions were just, I wanted to cry. I was scared. I was happy. Um, we get downstairs into pre-op, We're there for a few minutes. You know, they're telling you what you're about to go through, and see the surgeon again, and who was a really cool dude, by the way. Um, really awesome guy. Um, Jane gets escorted to the waiting area. She wanted to come back and see the surgeon because she didn't get her chance when he walked through earlier. Um, she still didn't get her chance to see the surgeon before surgery. Uh, she came back to say goodbye one last time, and freak of all freaks, um, my brother Tony calls. And I'm like, dude, I'm going back right now, so this has got to be quick. And just called to say you love me, good luck, and all that good stuff. Uh, Hung up, gave Jane a hug, and they brought me back. I don't remember going. I remember like a flash of being in the OR, um, but pretty much once I got in the OR, they gave me the propofol, and I was out within 2 seconds. Next thing I remember is waking up in recovery, high as fuck, and I had the catheter put in my stomach before, so I learned not to sit up right away after surgery. After that, um, so I kind of tested the water and was able to kind of adjust myself so I wasn't supine, well, so supine, and I recovered pretty quick. I uh, but the one thing, y'all, one crazy thing, and it took me a few days before I kind of realized this, um, was if I could put a sound effect to what happened when I woke up, from how I felt before to how I felt after waking up. Vroom. It was like somebody, it was Iron Man 2. Um, Tony Stark gets his new little arc reactor put in his chest, and it was just like all that shit was gone. And he just like sat up and just gone. That would have been me if I didn't have a catheter in my penis. That would have been me if I didn't have my core cut into. Um, I've got a pretty decent pain tolerance. So, they've already got me on all the anesthetics still, plus they're pumping me full of morphine in the IV for the moment. And then I moved on to oxys once they pulled the morphine. Uh, but the pain was never a thing. My issue for the first 2 days was the catheter. Uh, Anybody that's ever had a catheter knows that it it pulls that urine at its own will, not yours. Um, Being on PD, my understanding was, well, at least with the PD, gravity worked everything out. Um, so I thought maybe, standing up would help with the catheter. No, nothing helped. It just literally took that urine at its own pace. Um, and that sucks because you can't you can't close off. That feeling where you close off and you're not gonna piss yourself. You don't have that because the catheter is blocking that. Um, in fact, they encourage you not to use those muscles. For the ladies, I guess it's the kegels. Um, but whatever. So that was pretty uncomfortable. The first day, nah, not so bad. You gotta have it, so you just deal with it. Everybody was telling me that thing was gonna come out on Monday. That fucking thing didn't come out on Monday. The fellowship nephrologist comes in on Monday and she's like, "Oh no, we're not pulling that today." Who told you that? and basically everybody. So she said, no, no, it's got to stay in for at least 48 hours. Oh my God, it's another day. And the second day was worse, way worse. Um, by like 6:30 that night, um, I was ready to have that thing out. I was clamping down. I was leaking all over the place. Uh, it was just, it just wasn't a good deal. Um, so I made it to Monday. The fellow comes back with her whole team of doctors because she was doing rounds that morning and the morning before. And that shit really is like scrubs, yo. Like it's a like there was like a dozen doctors behind her, and all of them couldn't even fit in my room. Only like 8 of them made it behind her in my room. So she tells me, yeah, that catheter's coming out. I'm like, praise Jesus. And so, not even an hour later, probably about 20 minutes later, um, that catheter came out. Uh, wasn't terrible. Um, I wouldn't want to do it again, um, but it was out. And oh my God, once I could pee of my own volition, it was it was a godsend. Now, backtrack a little bit, back to Sunday, um, when I got back up to my floor, and I think it must have been, I don't know, 7 o'clock, maybe 8 o'clock. I was up and moving, y'all. I walked half my floor, and that was about all the energy I had to do. But come Monday, I walked that floor, the full floor, 4 times. Now here's the shitty part. I did that with a catheter. It was a whole rig I had to do to get it so I could do that. But because of the length of the hoses, I couldn't put my IV pole out long enough. So I'm constantly kicking it, and it's just, oh, it's so uncomfortable. But I got to get my walks in. You know what I'm saying? Um, so Tuesday morning, catheter comes out. I go for my walk. I sailed that floor, y'all. No, I didn't like run it or anything, but I could put that IV pole out, and it was a balanced walk. It was what I needed. Uh, when I come back, I would sit in the chair that was next to the bed. They had goals on my little whiteboard, and those were my only goals: walk 4 times and sit in the chair 3 times. And I sat in that chair all day, and I got my 4 walks in. Easy peasy. Uh, I did it both Monday and Tuesday, and um, yeah, there was a lot of traffic Monday and Tuesday coming in my room between nurses coming in for their vitals, um, between doctors coming in, introducing themselves. Um, cool thing was my surgeon came back both Monday and Tuesday to come and check up on me, just to check up on me. When do you don't know a surgeon to do that? Surgeons just kind of come up, talk to you for a minute, and then they're gone. Um, but no, he was cool. He came and checked on me twice, and he was really impressed with how quickly I was healing up, how I was moving about. Everybody really was. Uh, the other gal was Suzanne. I'm not even going to try to say her name right now. I'm going to butcher it. But that lady right there, she was my hero. She was my hero. She always got shit done. When doctors were arguing about medications, basically whether I should be taking aspirin or not, she was like, no, we'll call this cardiologist and sort this out. And she always had that smile, just like, Mike, don't worry about it. We got you covered. Um, man, my hero. Uh, but the rest of it was cool. The nutritionist came in and she reminded me of Chris. Okay, so here we go, Chris. That's my dietitian from Davita. This lady, if she got her way, I'd have fucking starved while I was on dialysis. Um, my diet was so strict, and she tried to give me options um, to alleviate like problems with my fluid restriction. Food options for my protein, but none of them worked, man. Just none of them worked. Um, but she was one of those people that would just stare at you if you didn't give her an answer that she liked or it was satisfactory. And I mean, stare at you. And I'm like, did I not answer your question? Why are you looking at me awkward like this? Case in point, well, this is just an interaction that we had just the week before. We were going over my labs, and one of my numbers, uh, my phosphorus, uh, had been up for the last couple of months, or the last couple of lab draws. And mind you, I'm already on the list at this point. I just got on the list, so it was like the Friday before I got my call. And she's trying to tell me because my phosphorus is high that transplant's not going to take me. Uh, Bitch, transplant already took me, okay? And, and so I got the whole attitude, and I say to her, I'm like, nope, no, I'm not worried about it, not at all. And she gives me this bird look, like, well, transplant, you really need to pay, Mike. No, just move on. Anyway, I could go on about Chris for a while, but she annoyed the shit out of me. But this new transplant nutritionist, notice the difference, dietitian to nutritionist, which should have been a better pick. But she comes in my room. Roman Reigns, love that guy. Um, I'm just gonna let that go. The nutritionist comes in my room and she basically does to me what Chris did to me in the beginning, just telling me everything that I can't have. But she is not giving me any options as far as what to substitute it for. So this conversation sounds worse than the one with Chris. It sounds more restricted now than when I was on dialysis. So I'm like getting depressed. Jane had to come back to Grand Rapids um, for her own thing. Uh, and then when she returned to Ann Arbor, I was in a completely different mood, and I told her what happened. Um, but then Tuesday, so that was Monday. Tuesday, uh, I dealt with a pharmacist. Now, Tuesday was the worst day because it was the day that I was getting out. And like everybody came through. This was the day that was like nurse somebody, nurse somebody, nurse somebody. For the first several hours I was awake. I could not leave my room. Like I was trying to get out for my walk, and I don't think I accomplished that until almost noon. Um, and the last one to catch me before I got to going for my walk, I made it 10 feet away from my door, and I hear behind me, Michael, oh, like you know me. And I turn around, and it's that little twerp of a pharmacist. I shouldn't say that. She's probably a sweet girl, but um, she just did not know how to deal with me. So I literally tell her I was trying to get some space between me and her before she caught me. So we go back in the room, and I've gone over my medications at this point, the new ones they're gonna give me. Once with the nurse, once by myself, and I'm explaining to Jane how I'm taking my medications because it's pretty cut and dry. Um, and this girl comes in and starts reading this shit to me like a bullet point presentation. And she is going at a snail's pace. I already want to get out of my room. I'm already angry. I'm already frustrated. I need to move. Um, and so she's no longer getting eye contact from me. Like I'm down here just looking at my chart, not even giving her the time of day. Hearing her talk to Jane, I can hear like the direction of her voice when it's on me and when it's on Jane. I can hear her coming closer, trying to, close that distance to get me to look up at her, like she's gonna like trick me into looking up at her. I looked up at her a couple of times, but it was like, really, are you really doing this? You're really taking your time with this. And then when I look at her and she didn't like speed up or change her presentation at all, right back down. Finally, she was done. Finally, I got out. Jane was not too happy with me. She was like, "Well, you treated that girl like garbage." And I was like, "Well, she treated me like a kindergartner, so she got what she had coming to her." Finally, I get out of there. Susan, again, was my hero. She comes in, she's like, "Oh, you're getting out of here in about an hour." I had to wait for, I had a drip medicine that was a 6 hour drip, and it still had, basically, it was going to be done at 5. So about 5:30, they come and disconnect me, pull my IVs, and I walk out of there, I think around 6 o'clock, which was, I guess, is pretty unheard of. Um, they tell you 3 to 5 days when you're in for a transplant. Man, I hit the 3 day mark. I was out in 3 days. We got a hotel. Stayed at a hotel that night. We got a discount because I was in the hospital for transplant. U of M had deals all around the city with hotels, and um, crazy thing, we stayed at the Comfort Inn right in front of the Red Roof Inn that I stayed at last time when I went to Ann Arbor for the heart cath. Uh, but anyway, stayed overnight. Had the follow up appointment where I met my new transplant nephrologist. I met my new nurse coordinator. Suzanne was there. Got a picture with her. Met my new dietitian. Um, and it was really cool. I explained, or no, not the dietitian, the pharmacist. I mean, the nutritionist this coming Thursday. Um, and the pharmacist was the first person I talked to, and she must have heard the story from the pharmacist at the hospital, um, because it came up about how difficult time she had getting across to me. And Jane and I both explained to this gal, that she was talking at me. She was talking to me like I didn't know what from what, like a kindergartner. Like I was just like I didn't understand how to take medication, and I've been taking medication since all of this shit started. So the gal starts talking to me, and she does pretty good. She just came back from uh, maternity leave, so she was really concerned about relating to her patients and not sounding like she was talking at. I said, "No, you're doing great. You're doing great." Matt, my new nephrologist, cool as what? Cool guy. Um, Amanda is my nurse coordinator. She's like, call me for anything. Anything. Um, so I think she and I are gonna have a really cool relationship. Um, all, yeah, so far my whole team is wonderful. So go home with my whole new set of meds and got back here. And with all the stuff that they gave me, because they gave me like a bag full of all my labs. I do one lab here in Grand Rapids uh, for one of my rejection meds. And then on Thursdays, I go to Ann Arbor for another lab and clinics. Um, so for the labs that I do here, they gave me like a bag with like maybe 15 labs ahead, 15, 20 labs ahead, uh, and it just gets mailed to them. Also, I had to use my old PD book folder for uh, information, homework stuff. Um, I got to take vitals for a while and bring all that stuff, bring that folder with me to my clinics. So I had to organize all of that. And I was putting stuff on Facebook this whole time, and I think people were under the impression that I've just kind of been that I was running around doing stuff. No, I was like laying on my floor organizing paperwork, y'all. um, so that was Wednesday, and I'm glad I did that because come Thursday, I was ready to just chillax, and I started, going through some side effects of all of this. The euphoria was down from the transplant. Uh, so, like, not the pain, but the discomfort had started to settle in. The fluids that they were pumping me full of were starting to make their way out, um, but they don't really. Your body's got to absorb all that fluid first before it makes it through its way through your endocrine system and out. So what was happening was all that fluid was just collecting in my groin, and um, this is gonna get graphic here for a second, but it was like looking at a bratwurst on a grapefruit. It was not me, okay, y'all. It was weird, but it was just I understood that it was just all that fluid just sitting there until my body could absorb it and get rid of it. And it did that for a couple of days. It was kind of like a roller coaster. Fill, drain, fill, drain. Um, Now my boys are back to being mine. Everything is proportionate. Uh, and now that all that fluid is down, the weird thing is like you can see the lump of my kidney right here, and then what apparently is the ureter, the lining. Um, the surgeon did tell me because I'm such a thin guy that it was going to be kind of visible from beneath because they put the kidney in front, right? And thanks for just driving through my grass, asshole. Um, but they put that kidney between my peritoneal lining and my stomach or my abdominal muscles, and then sewed me back up. So it's a weird spot, but I get it. They didn't want to unnecessarily uh, put damage the peritoneum. But the big deal was with a new kidney hookup, they didn't want the kidney getting tangled in with all my other organs while it's trying to heal. So, which makes sense. Pretty cool. Um, but not, for the first week, I've been holding on to my belly because it feels like it's just going to fall out. But yeah, so that was my week. I just came back from my first lab here in Grand Rapids. That went well. That's easy peasy. All they do is, just draw my blood. The cool thing about that, crazy thing about that, is being on dialysis for the last 5 years really jacked my veins up because they're taking dialysis takes so much fluid off you, and it gets you down to what they call a dry weight, and that's basically um, the least amount of fluid your body needs to operate is what they leave you with. Um, so when I get blood draws, it's hard for them to get blood draws. It's very sluggish, very painstaking for both, I guess, the patient and the phlebotomist. But today, that blood, because my fluid restriction is gone, um, that blood shot into the tube. It was crazy. It was like that needle opened up a super soaker right in that. But yeah. So grateful, thankful, blessed that I have a new kidney. Um, thankful for all of my friends that helped me out um, monetarily, um, spiritually, emotionally, uh, with rides. You guys are absolutely invaluable. And if I ever made you feel otherwise, I apologize. I was a different person just a week ago. Um, one of the things that I've said is I wasn't sure I believed the testimonies before transplant. I wasn't sure I believed the testimonies of other transplant uh, recipients. That there really is um, a change of heart, a change of perspective, a new lease on life when you get that new organ. I think a big part of it is, you've been on dialysis and you've been in this shitty position for so long. And once that kidney takes over and clears you of all them toxins that just are constantly sitting here, you you see clearly, man. You really do. Um, that and you don't want to waste this chance at life. You don't want to waste this gift. So anybody out there who is considering being a donor, uh, please do. Please do. You'll be dead, so you don't need the organs anymore. Um, it's real simple. Just have them down at the DMV or Secretary of State here in Michigan. Just check your donor box to let them know you want to be a donor when you're gone. Uh, to anybody who is looking down the barrel of a transplant or the possibility of transplant, um, find someone, just one person. You don't have to go to a therapy session or a group support. You just need one person that you can sit and talk to that's been through it on the other side. If you're in Grand Rapids, I'm probably going to be like a peer mentor soon, as soon as I can start, going out. And I'm only a week out, so I got to be careful because my immune system's still pretty much shot. I can't get sick right now, so exposure's limited. But um, I'll talk to you. Find me on Facebook if you got my number. But Facebook is Michael Morpheus Finley. Uh, it's worth it, y'all. It really is. Even if you experience complications post transplant, um, these guys know what they're doing. Um, but post transplant, it's really up to you to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Um, it's worth it. Totally worth it. So with that, I am gonna sign off. This is my first video log ever. It's weird. I don't know if I'm gonna post it yet, but yeah. I'll see you guys later.